My name is Autumn Brown, and I'm with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the Oklahoma State Library. And today I'm talking with Ana Barrios.
Ana Barros.
Ana Barros.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm so
no, you're
sorry.
good. You're good.
I'm talking with Ana Barros about her experience during the COVID-19 pandemic in Oklahoma. We'll be focusing most of our time discussing her role as a teacher, but I did have some more general questions that I'll ask you, like just about COVID in general.
Yeah.
Upon the agreement of Ana, this interview will be archived at the OSU Library for future generations to see. This project is supported through the Institute for Museum and Library Services American Rescue Plan grant funds. So just some early, what are your early memories of realizing that this pandemic was going to significantly affect our day-to-day life?
Oh, yeah. I definitely remember, and this is just in general or like school?
Just in general, like your life.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was very much in denial about it. I think like a lot of people, like, we had that week right before spring break. And that whole week, we're hearing all these news, and I had just come from traveling. I had actually been in DC for the impeachment trial.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I know. It was like this like crazy situation.
So cool.
I know. So I think I've been back for like a month, and then they're like, we're shutting down like all travel. And that just kind of stuck with me, where I was like, holy shit, like for a very long time, that was the last thing I had ever done, was like literally sit in the Senate chamber listening to the impeachment trial. I know. So I was very much in denial, because that would have like been insane, and it was, for that to have been the case. But like I traveled to Fayetteville with some friends, and I remember while we were there, we were like, it was like that weekend, the beginning of spring break, we were like, should we be worried? Like, what's going on? And then, masks like weren't a thing. So we were kind of like, are we like, so we just kind of dined out a little bit, but we were still kind of dipping our toes in. And then it was like, we don't know if we're going to come back to school. And that's, I think, when it really hit, was like, I have been telling kids, we all joke all the time. It's like we all, just kind of messed around, and we're telling kids like, oh, I'll see you next year or whatever. And then it was like, yeah, no, for real. So that was really when it hit me. And I had already committed to leaving my old school. So I was at East Central Junior High School before this, on the east side, teaching 7th and 8th grade. And for a variety of reasons, I decided to take a job here. So the next big like shock was really like coming to terms with the fact that I was not gonna be able to finish out the year with those kids, and most of them I've never seen again.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I never stopped to consider what that must have been like, to say goodbye for spring break, and to think I'll see you in a week, and then to start an entirely new school year without kind of like the closure of last school year.
Yeah. No closure. And yeah, like leaving an entire community, like a completely different part of the city, a completely different system. Like I still kept in touch with some kids, because immediately, as soon as it was like, we are not coming back to school, I think we weren't going to start online school for like 3 weeks or something. Me and the whole team, we were like, okay, we got to start contacting families. And I mean, at the time I had like 170 students. Wow. So we were like, it was like calling families, getting them to sign up on Remind. At the time, we're using, Google Classroom or this or that. And it was like, we had spreadsheets of who have we contacted in what way? Did we contact parent? Did we contact kid? Are they signed up on Remind? Are they getting our texts? Are they getting our emails? Have we contacted them at all? Like these huge spreadsheets, like conditional formatting, colors everywhere. And there was like probably 30 to 40% that we've literally never heard back from at all.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did you have any training with that at all? I mean, you just kind of were thrown into that.
Yeah, a lot of teachers were just like, the next logical step is to make sure that our kids are okay. So that's where we were at, was like, we know that like COVID is a risk, but then everything else that comes with like staying home for whatever reason, right? Whether it's like food and just like housing security and things like that, or like literal health and safety in a home, depending on what your situation is. So, and we obviously knew a lot about the kids already because we've been there with, with them for like 6 or 8 months. And so I think for me, a big thing that fueled me was like knowing, like, I know this kid struggles at home and, let me make sure that they're okay. And so it was a lot of anxiety, like just like fear for a lot of kids' well-being beyond COVID.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, how did the lockdowns affect your day-to-day activities, even outside of the school?
Yeah. Well, I was just doing nothing. Like, I think back to that time, I signed up for a library card for the first time, and I bought a Kindle, and I figured out some way to get, I don't even know that I know how to do it anymore, but like to get the library book onto my Amazon account and then onto my Kindle.
Oh, wow.
And I literally was reading like 2 books a week, like just sitting and eating like trail mix from Target and like, eating and just like reading books. And that's like all I did. And even once we started up with school again, like the thing about virtual school is there was a lot more flexibility in my time. And so I was like doing nothing for a lot of time, which as a teacher, especially in your first 2 years, that is like not the case at all. So it was a huge, like, it was like, like just a stop. And it was really crazy. Yeah.
So one thing that I fail to think about are like students who started school during COVID, like college students who started during COVID, and then they lost really like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned a couple of times now that happened like during your first, 2 years, your first 2 years of teaching, right? So what was that like for you to come into a teaching career and for like half of that career at the time to be virtual?
Yeah. So I had one normal year, which was 2018, 2019. And then my second year of teaching was when, at the end of it, that was that. Yeah. I think I definitely was lucky in that I had the experience of one full year of normal teaching. Yeah. So I kind of knew the fundamentals but I mean, it was terrible because my second year, like, I came in guns blazing, and I was seeing results with kids, like that sense of urgency. My relationships were so much better because I knew how to give a consequence, I knew how to run a class. Like, I was actually feeling like, oh, like, we're going to make it to the end of this year and I'm not going to want to like wither away, like I really felt like I was at the top of my game. And I was also like I was very burned out at my school specifically. So that was also like a factor, was once we went into virtual school, like at that point I wasn't seeing the kids anymore, but I was on Zoom with the adults at my school like every day. And that was really hard because the culture at my school was very like deficit based about kids and like a lot of just like compliance over humanity and punishment over like restorative justice and things like that. So as people were like talking about kids, like all I was hearing was the adult perspective, and I wasn't able to also be with the kids that bring the humanity to the job. So that was really, really hard too, feeling like I was in the middle of a uni. I was going to teach them about climate change. I was teaching them about like the carbon cycle. Like, we were doing science in social studies. I was like, no one's going to be able to walk out of here without believing in climate change. Like, we're doing this, we're writing policy, and it was like, again, like I just felt so good. And then we just kind of ended up throwing some things together for 5 weeks and like calling it a day.
Would you say that the quality of that work those last 5 weeks, I mean, we hear so much about, like they were just getting packets, but was there any retention going on? So like, how will you say that those 5 weeks fared in relation to like the stellar school year that you had already? Yeah. No.
I think the stuff that we were giving them was still like as high quality as it could be. And then we got speaking for myself, it got even better the following year when we had a whole year of it, right? And like establishing norms at the beginning. But I mean, I bet I could pull up numbers because I was running data. I'm a data oriented person. So I was like, who turned in work this week? And like I had spreadsheets again. And I think we were at like maybe 70%, which was decently high compared to a lot of other places around us. So like whatever. But those 5 weeks, it was all about like making sure that we were all okay. Like the work was framed as being optional by the district, which I loved. I was like, I think that's the right move, because we don't want, like, at the place that TPS is at right now, they don't have unfortunately, a lot that they can do that isn't just like compliance-based stuff. So I appreciated that for those 5 weeks, it was like, you know what, we're not going to like track that kind of data. We just want to make sure families are okay. Yeah. The following year, it was back at it. And like anybody who I know that stayed teaching in TPS, like it was destructive, because it was all about like numbers, like get your numbers up, and not like, are you okay as a human? So, yeah.
Is TSAS part of TPS separate?
It's a charter school, so we are way more independent. Okay. So it's still a public school. You have to live within TPS to apply here, and it's just a lottery system. Okay. But it's like we don't have to follow a lot of what they do. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Let's see. So 6 months into COVID, so you started the new school year in the fall, and then we come up on December and January. Like, what are your thoughts then, and how is the school year going at that point after having a semester? Virtually?
Yeah. It was like, I just remember at that time, and actually the reporter who wrote the New York Times article, I had originally met her through Twitter because she was like, hi, I'm a reporter. If you're a teacher with a lot of kids who are failing your class right now, like reach out to me. And I remember immediately I was like, girl, have I got... Let me tell you. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there was just a lot of that. Like I think my school had a really good system where we did not have the kids on Zoom every day. Okay. We only had them actually once a week. The other 4 days of the week, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, they were doing independent work at home. So we were like putting stuff on Google Classroom, right? And there was a scope and sequence and all that. But we only actually checked in live, like on Zoom on Wednesdays. Oh, okay. So I think that kept a lot of kids and a lot of teachers from burning out, which was great. So like I felt as a person great December and January because I was living my best life. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, girl, I was out here. I painted a mural. I joined multiple fellowships. I was doing community organizing stuff. Like I was all over this city, like I was working out. I was playing tennis. Like I was doing so many things. So I felt great. But I did see absolutely like the kids who were just like in that place where I like to do things on my own. Like, yeah, just give me something to do. I'll get it done, whatever. Like they were in a good place. But at that point we were having to do a lot of home visits and literally knocking on doors like, hello, I'm your teacher. Can you please log on? Literally once. Like, cause I can pull you through if you just feel like you're a part of something, like if I can get you there. But last year I taught 6th grade. So the same kids I have this year, I moved up with them in 7th grade. But when they were 6th graders, like they were new to the school. 6th grade is the youngest, that we have. And it was actually the first time that there was a 6th grade at all at this school. Gosh. Yeah, so that means the 7th graders were also new to the school because up until that point, 7th grade was the youngest grade. So we had like 2 populations of kids that had never been at this school, and their first engagement here was virtual. Wow. So my team in 6th grade, we did a lot to like build community. We were doing stuff like we had them in little pods. We would do little competitions. We had them come pick up stuff at school to do like a STEM challenge, like build something with a marshmallow, like whatever, you know, just stuff like that. And that was great. But it was like, I didn't even have any reference as to who. I couldn't even be like, hey, teacher down the hall, you had this kid. What's their deal? So, yeah, by December, I probably had 30% of my kids were failing my class. And it was, like, really depressing because, like, I think that I still gave them really meaningful stuff to do. But at the end of the day, like, I was grading them to the point where it was like, if you just do it, I'll give you a grade, which is the definition of compliance, you know? So I was, like, getting into a bad place of just feeling very hopeless that I would be able to do anything meaningful with them. But yeah, I ended up like making a unit where we were just picking an issue in the community that we cared about. And like every class had 2 issues and they had to like go and talk to people and come up with a plan, a project. So we did like a park cleanup. We like made some signs out here that are still around the pond, like to stop people from littering. We did like a showcase, you know, and so I think we were still able to get a lot of kids like invested in stuff, but it was like a disheartening time to be like, yeah, we're halfway through this year. And there were kids that I didn't meet until this school year, until 7th grade.
Wow.
Who I had all of this last year, but never showed up to anything, like 0%.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So would you say that the season of COVID has impacted your teaching at all? Not in a bad way, but like, do you see a shift in how you teach now?
Yeah. This year, now that we're back in person, we saw a lot of the emotional impact that being home had on the kids. And I was a proponent of keeping school shut down until it was safe. Like I will never say that we should have come back to school. Like, put that on the record. But like it was an unstable time for everybody. And definitely if you didn't have the resources to like give your kids what they needed last year, it was, you know, we're seeing the impacts emotionally here now. So there's kids, I have a kid who like took his school picture with his mask on because he has like dysmorphia. Like he can't see himself like without a mask. Like he had a panic attack when we had school pictures and they made him take it off. And he was like, I literally can't look at myself. I can't have anybody look at me with a mask on, with a mask off. I mean, you know, or things like, I mean, what you read in the article, like I've had stuff happen that has never happened to me before. Like a kid throwing a door into me or like cussing about what I'm talking about, you know, like they cuss all the time. But yeah, I was, you know, talking to a kid and he's like, oh, that's fucking bullshit. Like, I've never had that happen to Miss Barros. You're saying that to me right now, you know? So, I think what has changed about my teaching is like way more of a focus on the socio-emotional side, right? So like, how are we going to act in this class? And not because of compliance, not because I want you to be like, you know, but like, how can we make sure that we all feel safe, right? So it was a lot of like, get to know each other, get to know your names. Like, here's how you talk to a human being. Like, turn your body, look at them, like say hello, remember what they said. And then I would like literally quiz them. Like, what did, you know, everybody say your favorite food or whatever. Okay, now desk number 10, what did your partner say? Pizza. Okay, good. You paid attention, you know, and that's how you like engage with a human. So a lot more focus on that. And then also like on a positive side, I now know that they can do a lot of stuff independently, right? So like the bar is a lot higher for what I expect them to do outside of my classroom. I think I spent definitely my first 2 years like no work outside of school. Because I feel like homework as a concept is not very helpful unless it has like a purpose, you know? But now I have a lot more flexible stuff that we do. And, you know, I'm not going to go into it, but it definitely has shifted the way that I think about kids and what they're capable of. And like, you guys were able to do all of this on your own at home for a year and a half. Are you kidding me? Like, that's amazing. You know, like y'all are my heroes. And I tell them that all the time. So then also, why are y'all acting like this? You know, like, so it's like it's a dance. Yeah.
But back to the socio-emotional part, because I think we see it beyond just kids, right? Like I can say for myself, I've noticed I've become so much more introverted since COVID. Like my first trip after COVID, and it was a personal, I'm going to see my best friend trip. I cried because I did not want to leave my house.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's something I didn't even consider, like thinking you've had 2 years where people were so isolated and insulated in their own space. And now you're asking us to go back into the world and acclimate by like socializing with everyone. And I guess I didn't even think about what that was like for children. Like a 10, 8, 9, 10-year-old child who's been home for 2 years, and now you're having to literally teach them and practice how to speak to others.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that as a concept.
And like the last time that my 7th graders were in a school building for a whole year was in the 4th grade.
See, that's crazy.
Yeah. And like, you know, their brains, I like to say their brains are just like little raisins. Yeah. They're just like shriveled up, you know, and they were even more so in the 4th grade. Yeah. So like, bless their heart, you know, they're just kind of a mess. And this is such a tumultuous age. That's the whole thing about middle school, you know, everyone always says, and I've got the trifecta, I like to say. I've taught 6th, 7th, 8th, like I've seen them all, I've seen it all. It is a mess, right? So you bring kids who, as you know, try hard as they might, like really have a lot of social anxiety, have a lot of like pent up emotions, and like not a lot of regulation, because a lot of where you learn how to regulate your emotions is in a school setting, right? Because you are like, oh, there's checks and balances to what I do. But I even had kids who like, just something as simple as just like walk out of the room to go to the bathroom instead of asking. And it's like, oh no, it's a safety concern. I need to know where you're going, right? It's not a big deal. But it's like, oh, at home, I didn't need to do that. So there was a lot of kind of little things like that. But I mean, we had multiple fights. We had like stuff that doesn't really happen here. And we still are seeing that. Like it's April and we've got like multiple kids who are just consistently fighting and just still struggling with that emotional regulation. So I don't know if they were afraid of like leaving the house, but they were definitely not ready to be in an ocean of people like they are here. And just like minding your space and keeping your hands off of others, and like making sure that you're like asking for help and you know, just kind of existing. Like they weren't ready. It was tough.
Well, and one thing that you said earlier was how staunchly against you were coming back. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Because I know that, I mean, just nationwide it kind of trickled. Like my sister's school in Texas, they started back like September 2020 and were in their whole school year. And I think Oklahoma City kind of waited like that whole year. So when did TPS come back, and then what were your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So TPS regular schools came back in February. We were able to hold off until April. So like a couple weeks ago was like the anniversary of us coming back. And I just think that we don't have the money that other school districts have, that other states have. Like literally we're 50th or whatever, and genuinely do not have the resources to keep a school building safe for kids. I mean, I told like our HVAC system doesn't work. Like this is literally virus festering environment. Like I'm sweating. Like I literally have shirts that I change into halfway through the day because it's so fucking hot in here. None of these windows
now
open.
I don't feel so bad about
No, you shouldn't. Like literally, what does it say? 75. Like that thermometer is for in here. Okay, it is 75 degrees in here right now. Register it. Like, and none of these windows open. Do you think that there are 6 feet, even 3 feet, because they amended the regulation? Look at the size of this room. Like there are not 3 feet between each kid. So I was like, it's not even about masks. Like my kids all were 100%, except for one, like perfect out wearing masks every day. No, not a single issue. Did not have a single issue.
Wow.
Like kids are incredible, you know?
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot that they can't control about like literally the safety. So we got those little air purifiers. But that was through a grant that like our school applied for, but TPS didn't get those things, you know? So we just like were criminally under-resourced, underfunded already. And then on top of that, like definitely not for COVID Like, we don't even have a nurse here.
Oh.
Like, there's no nurse at the school. The nurse is
Wow.
Mr. Dan, the principal, who might, give you an ice pack.
Yeah.
Like, at East Central, same thing. Like, our nurse was the office lady, who was trained to do a couple things, but, like, not a medical professional.
Yeah, and that's way more implicating
Yeah.
during COVID.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's true of, like, a lot of Title I schools, period. So I won't, like, I don't know why Texas went back as early as they did, right? Or, like, why certain places, but I just know that I was like, I'm a young, healthy person, like, don't have a child at home, like, I am, like, the lowest risk possible, and, like, I wouldn't feel safe in a room with them, and that really sucks. But so that's where I was at. I was like, obviously, for every socio-emotional reason, academic reason, etc., we ideally would be in person, but it's like, if y'all had kept your masks on through the summer, we may have been able to stave off a new variant, or if we had given vaccines to, whatever. So
many if we would have. Let's see. So discuss, never mind. What were some of the barriers? What have you seen as some of, like, the barriers that you faced as a teacher, kind of like during COVID and coming off of COVID?
I think definitely, like, having insufficient methods of communicating with families. That was a big one, because for me, even before COVID, it's like, I need to get to know my kids' families. That's the first thing I do, is I call everybody up, so, like, how do we communicate? Is it email? Is it this app that doesn't really work? It was kind of like a lot of things were coming out about. I feel like it was a big year for ed tech. A lot of, app developers out here, like, this is going to solve your life.
Yeah.
But, like, there was nothing that really was here to, like, educate. It was, like, just to push content on kids. So that was really hard, was, like, there's still not really a platform that allows, like, parents to see what we're doing in class. And that is a problem. I should be able to, both so that parents can stay on top of their kids for their assignments, but also so that they can be involved in what we're doing and they can talk to their kids about it. So it's just, like, stuff like that I think was huge. And then, like, burnout. Last year I was supposed to work this whole summer job I had lined up, and I was like, I got to the end and I was just, I can't. Like, I can't be on a computer for literally 3 months. Like, don't put a screen in front of me, and I cannot think about education for, like, a very long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And speaking of burnout, before we even get to that, you mentioned having to do things on, like, Google Classroom and things like that. Did you have any training on that, or were you just, like, kind of pushed into it, and not pushed into it, but just kind of like, okay, this is what it is, figure it out yourself? And what was that like?
Yeah, no, there was no training. I think I had used Google Classroom, like, once before. Luckily, in the spring of 2020, like, those last 5 weeks, the district gave us a choice between using Google Classroom or Canvas. And then, so I was able to use Google Classroom a little bit and just kind of explore. But there was definitely stuff that now I look back, I'm like, I was doing all that, it was so easy. I could have clicked this button or whatever. But it was a lot of, like, teachers collaborating, like Miss Chapman, the math teacher. She is just really good at all of that. So she would do little workshops for us, or, there was, like, a Slack channel that was, like, Google Classroom questions or something, and people would, like, pop stuff in there. But no, there was no training. There was no, like, there was none of that. I know in TPS, they required every teacher to use Canvas instead of Google Classroom, which is a much more difficult. Like, Canvas is, like, I use it in college, it is a very difficult system. Google Classroom at least has, like, colors and, like, whatever.
Welcoming.
Right, yeah. You're like, oh, it says classwork. My work for my class must be there, you know, and that's like not the case with Canvas. So I counted myself lucky with that at least. But yeah, no, it was all like, if you figured it out, you figured it out, and if not, it was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know on the 6th grade team, like, we would get on Zoom once a week at least to kind of, okay, how we doing? Okay, what questions do we have? What have y'all, we had one of the teachers on our team had never taught before. So it was like, all right, girl, welcome to your first year. Like, here we go. Teach kids math.
Online.
In a pandemic, in a system you don't know, that no one's going to give you training on. And that's not to say that this school is amazing and they did the best they could, but it was like.
Yeah, and I think it's everywhere. I mean, my dad was a teacher, and I just remember being at home with him, and he's much older. And so I can just, you know, computers are already not his thing. Right. And then now you're asking him to put his whole curriculum online.
Yes.
I just saw how much he struggled with that. And
And especially in Oklahoma, like, I didn't grow up in Oklahoma, but, like, there are teachers here who are from Oklahoma and, like, who are, like, my age, and even at my age didn't get, like, computer training in school because it's, like, we don't invest in education here, you know? So, like, there's a teacher at my school who literally didn't have his first computer until college, and he's my age, like, my age, you know? And it's, like, I at least kind of in middle school, like, that was a thing. I didn't have my own computer, but like, we had a computer in the house or whatever, and that was like, I was able to be more literate in tech, but like, that wasn't a thing here. So it was just like a big, I think, eye opener in so many ways to like all the inequities that we already knew about, and then also new ones that I had no sense of, right? So we had, I forgot about this, but we did like a tech boot camp for our 6th grade families. And we were like, come with your kid, like parents or whoever's at home helping the like kids with school, come here and we will show you how to log on to Google Classroom and how to log on to like how to check your kids' grades. And depending on where we're at, like maybe I'm teaching you how to log on to your email. Maybe I'm registering you for an email, you know, just stuff like that. And that was really dope because we were able to like connect with families in that way. But even with that, I've still got families. Again, this is my 2nd year with this group, like still have families who are asking me how to log on to stuff, you know? So that's just a huge gap in general, not just for teachers, but for like the broader population is like computer literacy.
It's big.
Yeah.
I mean, even just my own computer literacy.
Right.
I don't know how many times I had to Google like how to do this in Microsoft Word, and following a YouTube video step by step. And I think that's what really made me think about like the older generation who has like little use for or training with computers. Yeah. And how everything has become so digital now. Yeah. Like, so you're kind of forced to have to become acquainted with computers.
Right. And that's like an access issue, you know? And then on top of that, if you have families who aren't fluent in English as well, which was definitely the case at East Central and here less so, but we do have families, it's like, oh, nothing's translated. Like, they're like truly nothing. Like, we just had to have a whole like thing at the school board meeting with families speaking up about that, because even at the school board, they didn't have like translators there every time, you know? So yeah, like there's like the tech literacy, there's like the literacy, like just so many barriers to access for families to support their kids, you know? And then seeing how the discourse was around like teachers are lazy or teachers like just want to stay home and whatever. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like I'm at home like calling families, getting them to make an email account. Like we were doing a lot that like the state should have been doing, or that Schusterman should have been doing, like, or that I should have been paid to do. Yeah. You know?
And I think that kind of leads to what I want to talk about next, which is burnout. Like so many people who are leaving the classroom. And I think that just abroad, we're seeing so many people, like COVID really exposed so many things, I think, in all workforce, in all work fields. But in teaching specifically, I guess I just wonder, like, what's the type of burnout that you've experienced among your coworkers and just abroad, I guess, in the teaching profession?
Yeah. I think there's, like, the general burnout of, like working so hard, and like teachers often work so hard and do, you know, the whole thing is like we wear so many hats, you know, we're counselors, we're social workers, we're tech boot camp runners, we are coaches, we're this, we're that, counselors, and that is like already burnt, like people were already burning out before, right? And then all of that with no resources, no support, like anything like that. I think for me specifically, like something that really got to me and gets to me to this day is like seeing kids who look like me or who have my background or my story or whatever, like being so failed by the system. And I'm the only Latina, like female Latina teacher here. And about a third of our kids are Latinx. At East Central, it's like 50% of the kids are Latinx, and my second year I was one of 2 Latina teachers. My first year I was the only one. So like when I tell you 70% of my kids were like completing their work or whatever, like that 30% were disproportionately Black and brown, you know, like, and knowing how the systemic failures were causing that and not them as people, obviously, right? Like knowing that their parents were less likely to have the literacy or have the time or the whatever to support them in what they needed to do, and knowing that a lot of them were taking care of siblings, were taking care of cousins in a way that like my white students, bless their hearts, were not having to do, you know. It was like, that is just, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
A lot. Yeah. And I thought in that summer, you know, with the protests and like all these things, I thought things were going to change, and like they didn't. I mean, I thought they were going to change, but I also didn't think they were going to change, you know, but I was like, well, at least there's more vocabulary. But it's like, we kind of talked about it, but like, I mean, we don't talk about it here. Like, and there are people who do, and there are people absolutely like in the building more so than in other places. But like, when I first started here, I ran a professional development on like supporting English language learners, like anti-racist support for English language learners. And that was the first PD that we'd ever had on like any topic related to race, like ever. And then we've never had one since, you know? So it was a lot of energy, and then like very little follow through, kind of nationwide. And that was what caused me, and it's like something that I'm always working through, right? Because it's like, I can't, just because I'm the one that has the connection or whatever, it doesn't mean that I
have to be able to do it.
Right. And just because I am good at it doesn't mean that it's good for me, right? And like working through all those things, and also like experiencing microaggressions from kids, from teachers, like in the building, and like being confused with the other Latina in the building, you know, or with whoever, and like the kids, like the 6th grader asked me the other day if I was the Spanish teacher. Like, I'm literally gonna be her teacher next year, you know, like I'm gonna, like, she was in my classroom as covering for another teacher, and like she knows who I am, and she still like asked me if I was the Spanish teacher. You know, just things like that. And then I'm like, if y'all are saying that to me, what are you saying to like my 7 kids, or like, you know? So I think that is a huge like layer to my burnout, is just seeing so many of the inequities being like replicated and not talked about. And last year, again, I tracked data on all that stuff. Like every few weeks I would have our team put down who was finishing their work, like who was on top of stuff and who wasn't. And then I would break it down by race. And it was like our Black kids and our Latinx kids were consistently, like disproportionately failing our classes. Wow. And it was like, I was like, you know, but like, like what do I do about that? And, you know, it's like outreach, relationships, all the things. So I was doing what I could, but also seeing other things or other people not like that caused burnout for sure.
I mean, yeah. So I guess just to end, like you guys are back in school, things are seemingly functioning or running like functionally.
Yeah.
But do you see COVID having like lasting impacts? I mean, in are those impacts, I mean, are they subtle, or what do you see as like lasting from this whole COVID pandemic in education?
Yeah, I think definitely the socio-emotional side. We are still like we're about to be done with the school year in 5 weeks, and like we still don't know how to be with other people. And I think that's not just because they were isolated. I think there's also like very few positive role models nationally in the media, you know, like just kind of in general, like we're all struggling, and also like we are consistently, like our kids are consistently being shown that they are not important and that they're not like human. And that's just terrible. So I think that's a huge impact of it. And then also like, how do you recover from having spent 2 years now, like seeing other people as like vectors of disease?
Wow.
You know, like how do you recover from that? Like we still have the instinct of like, oh, space, you know, like we were all outside just now. Our kids had finished testing and whatever, and we still were like, oh, guys, personal space. And then it was like, oh, but, and then, you know, and also, I don't know if it's safe for me to be, you know, they lifted the mask mandate, but I don't think things are cool. I don't, you know, but also 75 degrees in my room because the AC doesn't work because it's a 100-year-old school in an underfunded school district, right? So it's like, what are my choices? So anyway, all that to say, I think it's like a lot of like, in the same way that our kids need us to like co-regulate their emotions at this age, like we also as adults like need somebody, or like we need guidance, and that's not necessarily happening. I'm lucky to have a therapist, but it's like we need a national therapist, you know? And then yeah, it's like my kid like won't take off his mask. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't want others to see him like in his real face, you know, and like they still subconsciously see each other as like a danger because they were. Yeah. Like we had the Omicron wave hit us hard. Like I was out for 10 days. Like there was a day I had 5 kids in a class. Like literally 15 kids out out of one of 4 classes. You know, it was just like, wow. So yeah, like we've really gone through it like as a group. And so now it's just like, how do we keep building that trust? And sometimes it just feels like, is it even worth it? Like, yeah.
I feel like we're all flailing, and we've been flailing, and COVID just exposed how, like, we are really just out here flailing without any like leadership, or anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one thing that year, last year, really taught me, because I had more free time, I was like, wow, I was really running myself into the ground before. Also, like, COVID notwithstanding, like, I didn't even know what that was, and I was already, like, I was at the top of my game and all that, but I was, like, definitely burning the candle at both ends. Wow. So I think that just also proved to me, like, you need to find a way to make this job sustainable, and if it's not, then I can't do this job. Yeah. And sustainable means, like, that I have time after school, like, for my first 2 years, like, we would not have been able to do this because I would have been dead at the end of the day. Like, literally, like, driving one eye open, like, you know? So that's, like, you know, sustainable, also financially sustainable. Like, I have a second job. Like, you know, I can't make it work without it. And the day that I decide, like, I can't do 2 things, then, like, I genuinely cannot do this job anymore. But it just put things into perspective for me. Like, my job is not my life. It's a job. It's something that pays the bills. Is it something I love? And, I mean, like, if and when I leave the classroom, like, it will literally be the worst day of my life. Like, yes. But also, like, it's a job. And I need to do the things that are, like, right for me and put myself, like, not fall into the capitalist trap, you know? Yeah. So.
It's hard. Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to add today, or?
I think just you know, when researchers look back into this, like, I always tell my kids I want them to get tattoos that say, "I swear my 7th grade teacher tried to make me a better human." Like, I think, we were all trying our best, and especially in Oklahoma with legislators and people who, like, have never been in our shoes, we were doing the best that we could. Yeah. And the kids are doing the best they can, and they will run the world. They already are. And, like, I wish that we put kids at the forefront of decisions way more, because we would not be where we're at.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely blame, like, the lack of youth voice. I blame all of this on the fact that we've never listened to kids, genuinely. Because if we did, we would pay teachers more, and we would, like, take care of each other better.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ana, for talking with us today, and just for sharing your story with OSU. So thank you.
Yeah.